Yep, and you guys on Facebook have a great time. And we're going to cover off control and influence tonight. So we've got an interesting webinar for you on control and influence. And it's not versus tonight, it's control and influence. Anyway, I want to talk to you just briefly about mind models. Mind models are these things that help you learn how to think differently. It's not about what to think about. It's literally how to process information, how to take what you're looking at and look at it in a more effective way, more a way that actually tends to work and causes people to create thoughtful interactions, sometimes even with themselves. And control and influence is one of those ones where it creates interactions. It can be with others, it can be with yourself. And we're going to go through that stuff today. So buckle up, strap in, and we're going to take a look at what happens here with control versus influence. So, any other comments on mind models themselves, Trevor, tonight?
Well, I could comment a whole bunch. You just gave a sort of a brief overview there.
Yep. Feel free.
Okay, well, I'm good with just going right into it if we want to start talking about control and influence, or maybe prime everyone on and maybe ask how do you guys define control and influence in your life right now when you're dealing with other people?
Exactly. Are you looking for more control or more influence? That's one of the questions that I generally ask. And then I take a look at what do I have control over and what do I have influence over? And just needing to break it up and start looking at the control and influence piece. Okay, so I'm going to show you the three circles. And I'll just bring this up. I'm going to share my screen here real quick and tell me when you can see this. Whoops, it's not what I wanted. Yeah, there we go. It is. There. Okay, so you're seeing control
Yep.
and influence. Perfect. So we're going to start off by just taking a look. Whoopsie, I'm going to get rid of that and just redo this here with control. So there are three basic areas in your life. And one of the key areas that you have is the area of, well, actually yourself. And that's where everything starts with self. And then we have to take a look at another area of your life. It's how do you impact and influence others in your life. And then the third area that you're going to take a look at here, and I'll put this in green, is this is going to be situations. Most people don't actually worry about situations. And unfortunately, that's not effective long term. Self, others, and situations are going to be effective for creating the balance between where you are, how you're communicating to others, and the situation that you're in. So, sorry here, just something just popped up on my screen there. Okay, that's managed. And basically, what we want to do is we actually want to get into the area of the overlap and take a look at where is the sweet spot? How do we get in here? We get into self, others, and situation. And I think I'm going to change the color on that so it shows up more and just do that instead. And just, this is the area that is the sweet spot. This is the area we want to get into, is the central area of that. And that central area is when we are associating ourselves with others and influence and the situation. Now, the question that I have to you guys is, where do you have control? Well, anybody want to sort of throw something in the chat there? Where do you have control? Or who do you have control over? And, well, self and others. Well, Tracy, that's a common response, but in fact, can you actually control others? And most people think that they can, but you can't. So the only area that you can actually have control over is yourself. And others, you can have influence over. And believe it or not, you can influence the situation. You can't really control the situation.
Something popping up.
But you can. Did it go away?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You can't control it. So you can influence it. And that influence is really the key. And what is the way that you influence it? Now, we're going to get into that in a moment. But the really interesting part here is, as we go with control and influence, we're going to take a look at this whole area here and break it out slightly differently. And we're going to take a look at it from the area of what happens when the circles aren't overlapping anymore. And we'll take a look at it in this scenario. And if this is self, for some reason I'm getting this tonight a lot, but this is going to be self area, is if you are there and others and situation are all separated out, we're going to have a very ineffective area. So you're going to be focused in totally on yourself. Others are not going to be there. You're going to take a look at it from the other perspective, and others are not in your world. So you're going to be isolated. There's going to be a stuck state that you're going to create there, and you're not going to be able to connect with the situation. So self, others, and situations, the overlap of those three just really won't be applying. So, and it won't come together. What you'll find out is that you are isolating yourself. You are making decisions by yourself in a situation that you think should be able to influence others, but it's not, because we're not asking questions. So some of the questions that I'm going to pose to you is, just 2 seconds here. So what has changed in your world in the past few days or weeks that you can control? So what have you done in terms of taking a look at change for you? And is there anything that you can take a look at? Who is responsible for your growth? And most of us take a look at that answer and go, well, I'm responsible, but I can't do it all by myself. And you're absolutely right. But the responsible party still comes back to you, but you have to be able to figure out where growth comes from and who has something more to offer, and find that guide. You know, you guys are the heroes of your own story. You know, showing up here, you guys are the ones that are living your lives, going out there, doing this thing and applying the mind models to your life. It's not me that's changing you. It's you changing yourself. So I can influence you. I can help you see a different path, but I can't walk that path for you. And that's one of the big challenges that people have. They go, okay, I'm responsible for my change. who's changing it? Am I changing it? And the question is, do you have the tools to change your life predictably in the direction that you're looking for? Anyway, these are some of the things that self, other, and situation start causing us to take a look at. And when we get it right, we can bring it right back into the area of the sweet spot here, where we look at this and we go, this is like perfect for us right here. This is where we want to be. And, you know, just that's the perfect spot. But we are rarely there in our lives. So we struggle, we look at it, we attempt to understand where we're going, and we look for support in our lives and who in our life is actually supporting us and how are we nurturing that support from others and moving that forward. I'm going to have to get that addressed later on. Anyway.
Are you able to hear me, Blair?
I am.
Okay. I keep getting warnings from Zoom saying it can't detect my mic.
No.
Well, since I interrupted you, I might as well
jump in. Yes.
I've found with this self-othering situation and the relationship of control and influence, I sort of see people when they're having problems with this falling into two main categories. I don't know if categories is the right word, but it's either I've noticed either with myself or other people that some people have a tendency to try to control everything, so that they're trying to control others or the situation as much as they can, and they're doing everything they can to try to control it and micromanage it, and you could say manipulate it to do what they want. And then I also see another group of people where rather than trying to control others in situations, they actually feel quite the opposite, that they're helpless to do anything about it because they don't have control of others in situations, and they kind of throw their hands up in the air that there's nothing they can do. And it's because they're not really noticing how they can influence. That's what I've noticed, at least. Would you have any comments on that?
Absolutely. Like, you know, basically one of the things is when you start getting into that, you don't have any influence in your life and you can't even control your own situation, what tends to happen is that's pre-victim mentality. It's like you're going to become, or you're leaning in or leaning towards becoming a victim. And life starts getting more and more out of control. And it's very, very difficult for people to start recovering from that, especially when they're caught up in their why, because everything is going to be past focused. So one of the key elements that we have to pay attention to in this area is, are we moving on a timeline here? Is this, and if this is a timeline, whoops, that's very poor. So anyway, I'll just do it this way, timeline. There we go. Anyway, what we wind up doing is, on this timeline, we wind up having an ability to change ourselves. And we have basically a past, a future, and a present. I'm going to refer to that as now. And this now state, this place where we are in, this spot here of now, is in fact the only place that we can make change happen in our lives. But what we try to do, or some people, when they're disassociated and not in that sweet spot that I showed you before, like not up where it's like up here, in this area here, when they're not in that area, that when it's starting to come together like this one, what tends to happen is this whole area of their now starts becoming a past now. And their past gets pulled into what they perceive as a present, but it keeps on drifting back. And they're looking at their life constantly through all the pain and problems that they had, and not where they are now. And they don't see choice ahead of themselves. They don't see themselves as being able to see anything that they're doing other than what their problems have been. And sometimes they get into blaming others for their conditions and their situations. Sometimes those situations have happened to them. One of our clients that we were talking with today actually wound up abandoning a lawsuit that happened. The person screwed them, basically, did a lot of things to them that was not effective, and they have hard evidence for that. But if they pursue that, they lose focus on their business and their company. And what's the point of keeping on suing them when your business is not growing the way that you expect it to, because you're over-focused on pursuing justice and trying to, fight a battle.
That's a really good point.
And what winds up happening is you wind up, it sucks so much energy that it's all past focused, So really the thing that we were working on today is it becomes critical that we start getting people refocused in the now and brought forward. And I even got it so that I started asking them, what would happen, not just present tense, but present facing forward, like from the present and looking forward with this viewpoint, as opposed to if we did it from the perspective here of doing it in this viewpoint of having it past and focusing backwards. When we're in that past focused base, we're stuck, and it's usually we're asking the question why. But when we're going forward in that forward focused possibility thinking, we can usually ask the questions like, what now? And basically, what's next?
And what sort of questions can people ask themselves if they want to focus in on how they can influence others and the situations that they're in?
So, do you want to align yourself with another person? Sorry. This is not going away this time. There we go. So do you want to align yourself with another person? And the short answer is most people do. In fact, we have to. In life, we have to create relationships going forward, not just personal relationships, but business relationships. You can't get into business without a business relationship. So that's not an effective thing.
And you also can't influence people very effective. At least in my experience, I've found that I'm not very effective at influencing people if I'm not in alignment with them. So that one of the first things I try to do is work really hard to get into alignment with people. Because if I don't get into that alignment with them, I'm not going to be able to influence them in the same way. They're either not going to be open to it, or depending on what's causing the misalignment, if there's tension there, we can be influencing each other in a negative fashion. So I found to have effective influence on someone, getting into alignment with them is the best way for me to get results.
Interesting. So how do you wind up doing that? What's the first thing?
It usually starts with a question. That one of the things that I learned from you a long time ago.
Are you jumping into the alignment process?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's actually where I was going to go.
Yeah. Or do you mind if I ask you a question?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, the first thing here is, do you mind, if I ask you a question? So, do you mind if I ask you a question?
No, not at all.
Right. Great. What do you think happens under that circumstance when you get that no, not at all? You get a yes response, and you get you get a predictable yes response. So it is almost invariably yes. Now, the interesting thing is that when you get a no, you can almost always ask, when might be a better time to chat about this? And that actually shows a ton of respect for other people, and it helps them, working with the information there. It really does let somebody go, I respect your time, I respect you, I respect your information. It works well. So do you mind if I ask you a question? And the answer will be about 90% of the time, yes. So it's a great leverage point. So that takes you to that next level. And that's awesome. So the next step that you go after that is, so you ask that question, you ask for permission, and then you do something else. And you can do one of two things. Do you mind if I ask you a question? And they say yes. Well, or no, I don't mind if I ask you a question, or whatever that is. You got to make that determination. You get a positive response, or instead of asking the question, do you mind, you can just ask, can I ask you a question? That's the other one that actually works super well, is just straight off, can I, or technically it's may I ask you a question? And then the answer comes down to yes or no, same as above. And then when you get the yes, then you can go into, there's two things you can go directly into. From there, you can go directly into asking a question of that person, or you can ask again another question, but ask to, that's fill in. Okay, this concept of fill in is an important one. Trevor, you've used this before, correct?
Yeah.
The fill in pieces. So how can you share a bit about fill in and then how you've used it?
Okay. Well, the first part is getting permission, and that's what he did at the top there. Like, do you mind if I ask you a question, or may I ask you a question? So that's basically getting permission to get into alignment with someone, is how I look at it. And if I'm going to fill them in, if I'm going that route out of the two of either asking them another question or filling them in, if I'm going the route of filling them in, that's usually because I've got something that I want to share. I don't have a specific situation in my head, but let's say I'm having a conflict with someone over something, and something's not really working for me. Rather than going and blowing up.
Can I give you a scenario? I mean, I know that you do real estate, so you've probably had this with real estate clients. So a guy is walking up, and he's a little bit. You're in the middle of negotiations, and you want to clarify something with him. So, do you want to do a quick role play with them? Sure. And I can be your client, and you can be the realtor.
Sure. Let's give it a shot.
Okay. Super. So, how come that jerk didn't call me back yet?
Hey, Blair, do you mind if I ask you a question?
No, but fill me in on, tell me about that guy. Like, how come he hasn't gotten back yet?
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, I can fill you in on probably what's going on here. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm just waiting for the other realtor to get back to us so that we can move forward with this. Sometimes they're busy with other clients and they can't get back to us right away. I know it can be frustrating when we want to move forward and we can't get a hold of them. But all the different realtors are quite busy at this time. So we just got to be a little bit patient here, and we should be able to connect with them soon.
Okay. I don't like it, but it's reasonable.
Okay. Yeah, I understand for sure.
Cool. Okay. So right there, that was a little bit slightly off script, but more real world. So
Mhm.
then again, and so it again still goes back into
Testing
taking.
my skills.
Yeah, that's right. I am. I mean, you got some skills there, guy. So
And that's a good, if you don't mind,
go for it.
it's not always going to be comfortable is something that I just felt compelled to say right now. So I was on the spot there a little bit with testing the skills. So I didn't feel like 100% confident or self-confident while I was going through it. And you might not always feel that way either when you're practicing this stuff, but you've got to do it. And it can still end up being more effective, even if it's not comfortable. It doesn't have to be completely smooth for it to be effective.
Exactly. Yeah, so true. So true. It's like there are so many other variables that you can take a look at, you can do that are different, and making it make sense for yourself is the first order of business. You've got to figure this stuff out for yourself, and that's the first thing to do. Okay, the next thing to do is to start going with let's take that role play and sort of do it a bit from the top here. Or one of the things here is there anybody in the audience here on the Zoom call here that actually wants to role play and see how to actually put the alignment process into play here? We can actually do this for one. Again, all you do is just put up your hand and we can bring you on.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome. We could bring them on, and you could give us a real situation, maybe something that you're dealing with right now, or something that happened in the past that you weren't sure how to handle it differently.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody's out there that could get on, that would be super. Anyway, don't see any hands going up for volunteers, so we'll just keep on going with this. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to do was just do one where it's asking a question. So as opposed to a fill-in.
Sure.
So I'll be the person here. Hey, Trevor, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Sure.
So what worked today on getting that stuff on Facebook up? What worked for you today?
Oh, well, one of the things that worked is just by getting some of the content up there, we can start having our ads running, and we can start getting some more people seeing our content. So that's great.
Interesting. That's very cool. Thanks for the update. So right there, it's alignment just more in a business context, just to get it up and going. So that's the number one thing. So one of the things that we're trying to do is when we're doing that whole piece on control and influence, we're asking questions to get a sense of, well, to actually be able to influence the situation. So that's one of the key things that we can do in this scenario here, is we can bring it over and start dealing with the influence in this situation to be able to say, I want an update, and updates are critical. So updates work here. The other thing that works here is that you get to, you can ask the question, hey, Trevor, can you share, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can you, is there something that I should be finding out about Facebook, or is that being managed well by you at this point in time? Are you getting overwhelmed with it, or is that working well for you?
No, right now it's actually working well. I know what I've got to do and what my next steps are. So if I was going to involve you, it would just be when we're getting to the point where I need you to make more videos.
Okay, cool. By the way, that brings up another possibility here. Just asking people here on the call, hey, guys, if you have a specific thing that you'd like me to give you a talk on in terms of some of our mind models, please feel free to put it into our chat. We'd love to hear from you. And I'm seeing that some of you are loving the whiteboard thing. I'm getting this little notification popping up here, which I'll take care for next time. Figure out what the technology is that's screwing up in the background. I can remove it quickly. But if there is something that we can do to facilitate your learning here, then that's one of the things that we'll be doing here. So,
oh, we got a comment from Kevin. He said the ad worked today. That is how I found the program.
Oh, the ad worked. Oh, thanks so much.
And then Taylor said, I'm just wondering, I'm not getting sound. So you probably can't hear me, Taylor, but I'll start messaging in there to help troubleshoot that with you. I'll let you continue, Blair.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So, oh, wow. Okay, cool. Anyway, that's actually, sorry, I got overwhelmed with the Kevin and the ad work today. Sorry. I really appreciate that. So that's super. We're going to start taking a look at more of the mind models, because mind models are these tools that we wrap into our everyday life. And we use them to be able to help balance out and see how we're actually engaging and looking with at others and at ourselves, so that we can actually start being able to shift ourselves more intentionally. Actually, is the word that I use frequently. We want to do things with a sense of being able to be in control, because the only person we can control is ourselves. So if we can start figuring out how to be intentional and deliberate, our lives tend to start working out more effectively. So the more that we can wrap our heads around how to do that, and then also influence others. And the best way to influence others is through questions. So that is something that I wanted to also bring you to. And, you know, we're covering quite a few pieces here. And don't forget that later on, the last half of the webinar here, we actually do profiling here. We listen to people's language patterns and tell them all about themselves. So that's one of the key elements that we wind up doing. Now, to be totally honest about it and fairly transparent, these are things, the mind models here, the self, other, and situation is one of those filters that I listen to language through. So how is this person talking? Are they primarily focused on themselves, on others, or on the situation? And that tells me how they're literally thinking about that information and how they focused on it, where they brought up that information from. Is it past focused? Is it present, like in the now, or is it future focused? And where is their arrow of time, as it were? And is their arrow of time looking at it and going back? And are they stuck in their why? Because if they're stuck in their why, it's very challenging for them to get out of their own way. And that doesn't work particularly well. So, you know, what you wind up doing there is getting this whole focus here, and this thing starts becoming heavier, more dense, and doesn't actually work well. But as you turn your life around and get it back to this present moment, the more that you can do that, the more effective you can be, the far more impact you have on moving it forward. And, you know, future facing nows are the way that we have to get to. And yes, Dwayne says, Blair, may I ask you a question? Totally, yes. Would you like to jump on as a panelist and ask it in person, or just ask it via text, Dwayne? I know there's a bit of delay here, so I'll just keep on going. So please feel free to fire away and ask some questions, no problem. And I personally tested just...
personality test, he just said he was a campaigner.
Interesting.
Personality test he did.
Interesting. Interesting. I'm sorry, I don't know all the different personality tests at all. Like, there's a lot of personality tests out of there. So if you could specify which one, was it Myers-Briggs or what was it? So there's a bunch of different ones out there. So anyway, the personality testing, by the way, is they're a great start. So yeah, no problem, Dwayne. You can go check on that one, but they're a great start to give you an overview of yourself. They're a good snapshot, but they are not definitive by any stretch of the imagination. So I really wouldn't worry too much if you don't have a great, like your personality test came back as something that it wasn't. Back in the day, when I was doing personality testing, we used one of the ones, I won't comment on the name here, but the whole reality and where the best minds at the time were saying is that once we pass the age of around 25, our personality is locked in for life, which we found we actually used the personality test to actually prove, because we would train people on these, well, it wasn't exactly called mind models back then. They were called, they were a modified version and life skills, but we had heavily modified them with what wound up becoming mind models at the time. And we were able to transform people's scores that were said to be locked in from people that had aggressive tendencies in their life to lowering the aggression, from people that were not problem solvers that tended to get themselves into stuck and resourceless situations where they felt hopeless and alone. We caused them to shift on a highly predictable basis. In fact, we got a 76.2% success rate in shifting people's lives back in the day when we were doing all of that testing and whatnot. And that's where I did a lot of the foundational research on mind models that got me going here to say, this stuff has to get out to the general populace. Oh, interesting. Never actually heard of that one. So can't really comment on that one, Dwayne. I'm sorry.
We got another question that came in here. Aggie said, I was getting a little frustrated with the group I'm coordinating as I do not see much interaction. So what can I do with applying this model effectively in my group so that, one, I don't get frustrated, and two, for me to evaluate the effectiveness of the training and give to them?
Perfect. Great questions.
There's more to it. I asked the questions yesterday and still no interaction. What else can I do so that I can create an impact or influence the behavioral change within this group?
Okay, that I can definitely deal with. Having lots and lots of experience in group work, this is a common issue. So first things first, if I had you on here, who asked that question? Kevin?
Aggie, no. Actually asked that question.
Oh, Aggie. Great. So by the way, Aggie, that would be super. Yeah, if
that'd be the best way to manage that.
By far, because then I can get the more rapid interaction here. Are you willing to come on? I'd love to have you on here and interact with you, and I can show you exactly how to use different mind models so that will engage, and you can set that up.
So we did also have a comment from Kevin. He's just saying, trying to understand the mind models, so I need to review past trainings. That would be very helpful. This is, I think, number 11 now, Kevin. All the other trainings are recorded. They're on YouTube, and they're also, most of them are on the Facebook group. But if you're in the Facebook group, the Blair Dunkley Experience, I do have an announcement post in there that links to the YouTube playlist with all of the past ones. So we do refer to a lot of other mind models in here. So it can get a little bit confusing, and you'll definitely get a lot of value out of going into the past trainings. Usually they're on a different mind model each week. So there's a whole bunch of different ones that have been covered in the past. With that said, I still think you could look at what we were doing today and get value from just this one mind model. but yeah, definitely helpful to go back and watch past trainings as well.
Yeah, super. So Aggie, hopefully, I'd really love it if you would, pardon me, come on as a participant here, if that's okay with you. I'd love to invite you on. One of the things that I do is I manage expectations. So expectation management is the first thing that I find is actually necessary to do. So you set the expectation. I warn people, I'm going to pick on them. I'm going to actually jump on there and just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be picking on people in the group. And, you know, we only learn when we get involved. And the highest, the best, most effective way that we learn is by experiential learning by far. So that is sort of the critical piece that I announce in there. Secondly, I then go, if I had Aggie, Ian, Kevin, whatever, you know, Aggie, I'm going to ask you a question. And so that I announce who I'm going to ask that question to and expect a response from them. And they go, yeah, but you're putting them on the spot. And I go, yeah, because there is a level of excellence that we are attempting to become better. You're in a learning mode. You are engaging. We are wanting you to get there and transform yourself. So that's one of the things that is critical right there. So I'm going to just stop sharing temporarily here and go back to here because I noticed that there's a couple of things here. When I stopped sharing my screen, Aggie, just so that you know, yeah, Trevor, when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see these questions that are popping up. So thank you very much for bringing them. And
you just have to open the right window. There's a little bar that you have that there's.
Yeah, no, I got the bar, but it wasn't there when I shared my window. It's at the bottom and it didn't show up. So
okay. Yeah, it's just probably in a different place.
Yeah, I think it only seems to be when I'm sharing my iPad information, just so that you know that. So anyway, yeah, so number one, set expectations. Number two, ask people by name directly for their contributions. And the other thing that I do is frequently I teach people the evaluation skill set. So evaluation versus judgment, it's the mind model. And so I use the mind model and I go, I'm going to go around the group here and I'm going to ask people to say what's working for them, what's not working for them, and what's one thing that they can take away or learn from this. And so I'll actually pop that back here because I think that that's sort of an important one for people here to see. And just 2 seconds here. There we go. And it's just over here. And I literally do it this way all the time. And I go, oh, just. What's working? What's not working? And one thing you might change. So those are the three things that I would wind up, the three questions I would use to cause that group to start evaluating and starting to get engaged. So it's relatively safe, like 70-80% safe. It's hard to screw up with that one. It causes people to figure out what's going on for them. I don't, I want to put the onus on people to be responsible for their own learning. A lot of the times, people, like even on webinars and whatnot, they're not responsible. They sort of go, the instructor is the one that's responsible for your learning. Well, no, you're really not. You're responsible to guide people through a learning process, not have them learn. So I'm just a guide. I'm not the hero of your story. You are that person. You have to adopt and adapt the information to your life, because it's your life. It's not my life. And that makes it a little bit more challenging for people. And when they start realizing that I have control over my life, and you can start getting right back into this control and influence. And once a person starts realizing the level of control that they have in their life, right there, their life starts to change. And that's one of the key elements there. So, yeah, it's super.
We had a question from Taylor. He said, how would you persuade people to follow up with you and follow up on your phone calls? And I think they also commented on the Facebook Live. In a scenario where the other person is ignoring your calls, what would you do or handle it? I'm assuming it's the same Taylor, since it was two Taylors, but.
Oh, okay, super. So, sorry, can you start with the first question first again?
How would you persuade people to follow up with you and follow up on your phone calls?
Okay, so how would you persuade people to follow up with you and follow up on your phone calls? Well, the first thing that I would do is I would ask them specifically when they might get back to me. I would seek commitment. And the when and the where of those two pieces are critical. Whens and wheres are always about commitment. And if you're not asking for a specific time or setting a specific location for, like, phone calls, it's you're dialing up, you're on the phone. Okay, so that's a specific location, it's implied. But the when do you expect them to get back to you? And are you setting an expectation? And is it a time-specific expectation? So I've got a contractor, we're renovating our bathroom. So the guy, I got him to commit to calling me back at 1 p.m. today. So at 1:17, he still hadn't called me back. So I called him. Well, hey, the guy said, all right, Blair, yeah, no, give me 15 minutes and I'll be back with the answer. And it was the taper, Dan. And, because we're doing drywalling. And the taper, Dan, turned around and I said, okay, so I've got Dan's name. Can I get his number? Sure. Here's what it is. And you know what? But I'll have him over at Thursday at 9 a.m. and we'll be over there. And I'll go through everything with him. And I went, okay, great. Well, because he was late and I'd already done my due diligence on getting Dan, the tapers and drywaller's number, I called him and I said, hey, Dan, how are you? I'm Blair. George phoned you up and said you were going to be coming over on Thursday morning at 9. And Dan said, yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember. Yes. Great. I said, okay, so I'll be around here. And do you have my address? Yes. And blah, blah, blah. And made sure that I gave it to him again so that he had it. So again, I went through that and he said, well, you know what? Just in that short, I don't know, it must have been 35, 40 seconds of a conversation. He got honest with me and said, you know what, Blair, I probably won't be making it till 9:30-ish. And I said, oh, okay, what's up with that? And he said, I've got to go out and pick up some stuff, on Thursday morning. No problem. Thanks for letting me know. Really appreciate that. But I got a commitment and I got his phone number and it's his cell phone. So I can track the little sucker down when I need to. So, and again, that's the piece of the puzzle. So it's about getting your whens and your wheres. And for me, cell phone is a where. Where am I going to get a hold of you? How am I going to get a hold of you? People might say, but to me, it's that where in my mind. Where's that person going to be? At the end of their cell phone. So I want to engage with that person, talking to them on the phone. I want to start building a relationship with them. People will start going away if all you have is an appointment and no commitment. And the more that you can engage with a person and make it a meaningful experience between the two of you, and you can talk to that person voice to voice, it actually is the most powerful connection, because you're starting to build a relationship. When you're doing the relationship building online, it becomes slightly more challenging, simply because you can't influence as well. You have to guess what those emotions are of your future customer. And by guessing at what those emotions are, you get a broader swath of people, which refine down into eventually customers. That's one of the things that happen. But it's the psychology behind that. So just knowing that to influence people, the more you can create a relationship with a person, the more likely you're going to be able to actually influence them. So in that situation, in whatever situation you're in with that person, the more present you can be in that situation, and the more personal you can make your message to that individual, the more effective you're likely going to be. Hope that answered your question there, Taylor. And yeah, that's that bit. There was another question here that you brought up earlier.
Aggie's question?
Yeah.
I thought you had finished with that.
I did, but no, it was just to fill you in a bit more about mine. Oh, that's you, Trevor, chatting to Kevin. Okay, great. Cool. Okay.
So is there anything else that you would like to say about the relationship of control and influence with self, other, and situations to tie it all together?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point, because there is a summation piece and a little bit of a story here. I don't know how many of you guys are out there that are building your own businesses or want to take your businesses to the next level, but self, others, and situations, and recognizing what you can control and what you can influence is critical to growing your business. Because since you can only influence even your own employees, you can only influence people, others, and that influence spills over, into engineering a situation. You can then create a scenario where you can start growing your company on a much more predictable basis. If you try to control everything, you're going to wind up micromanaging people, and most people today can't handle micromanagement. So if you over control, your best people tend to leave. So just bear that in mind. Secondly, if you influence, but you engage people by setting an expectation. One of our clients we've done this before. One of the clients I can actually name and label, share who it is. I'm out of Canada here, and out of our city in Edmonton, we have an individual here. His name is Angus Watt, and he's given us permission to use his name. And he's on radio and television 13 times a day as he does the business news on one of the conglomerate of stations, both radio and television. And Angus was stuck, and he'd been doing this way back when, but he was stuck at about $150 million book of business and to 200. He was fluctuating, and we found him again, or we didn't find him. He found us. We came together when he was at about 150 million. And he wanted to take his business to $500 million. And with the first thing that we recognized that we needed to do was get him to understand how to influence as opposed to control, and what he could control and what he could influence. And when we created an environment where his business could grow by him being able to influence, he started recognizing the shifts over and over and over again. And those shifts got him, we got a 5-year contract to shift them from 150 to 500 million, but we only ran that contract for 3.5 years before we recognized all of the skill sets, all of the mind models that we needed to get into him and his team were in place. We got the right people in the right seats on the bus, and the bus going forward facing, as I shared with you before, going in a direction that was not past focused. It was front facing, going forward into the future, but from the now. That was huge, because although Angus was that way almost all the time, he did not set expectations for other people on his team to necessarily be that way, and some of them weren't. So we did have to have a couple of people got off the bus, a couple more people that were in better alignment got on the bus, and we made sure that everybody on the bus was facing in the same direction and going forward with the bus. So that's huge, number one. Number two, the expectation that we set was for being the best of the best. And when he hit $500 million, he stalled out for another 9 months, but he swore up and down he was never, ever going to be stuck not growing for a year, full year ever. So he picked up the phone and called us, and we went back in and got him moving again. And he is now over $1 billion book of business, which is staggering. And it was done right at that 500 million to $1 billion. When we came back in with that 500 million, we shifted him into the best of the best model and all of his team members. And by doing that, things really changed. What happened was, well, when you hit $1 billion, first of all, in North America, there's approximately 50 people, 50 financial managers or brokers that are managing books of business of $1 billion or more. And that makes them, well, pretty darn close to the best of the best. There are very, very few up in Canada, and there's more down in the US, but not a lot. So anyway, long story short here is, when you start setting an expectation and you give people the mind models so that they can actually live into that expectation, and these mind models are like tools that they can actually do things with it. And I was actually daydreaming the other day and saying, what sort of superhero would, best fit mind models? And I went Batman. How come? Because Batman has his utility belt, and every situation that Batman's in, he can whip out a thing, this super tool, and whip it out, and boom, he's got the right tool for the right occasion. Mind models are like that. When you learn what the mind models are, you've got the tools that you need, these almost superhero-like abilities, like being able to create alignment with almost anybody at any time. And I mean, I work with extreme people over time. I don't do much anymore, but I used to work with people with severe mental health issues. And these mind models work there like 80% of the time or better. And I mean, they work almost 100% of the time when I go in and do this with my business clients. And it's like, they go like, wow, how's that possible? Well, when you know what the mind model is, and you go, I don't even have to pick the most, the mind model is effective versus ineffective, but I'm going to break it down and put in the judgment word of right one, but it's the effective one. When you don't even pick an effective mind model. You've got so many, well, quite a few others that you can whip out and try almost instantly, so that you can pick it up so quickly where people barely even notice that you made a mistake. But in fact, most people don't. They think, oh, he's just doing this thing. And
unless they've known you for a while, right, Blair?
Yeah. Well, that, and they go in, and sometimes people don't even notice that I do it when they're new. Like when I've just met them, they don't notice what I'm doing. They don't notice that what I tried was a little ineffective, so I get it to be more effective. So that's some of the pieces of the puzzle. Anyway, just thought I'd share that story and go. So when you start setting expectations start changing your world, your own expectations of yourself and the expectations that you have of other people. Some people will refuse to not live up to those expectations because they have exceeded their own personal view of where they thought they'd get to in life. And there's a book called Good to Great, written by Jim Collins. And in that book, there's a quote that I'm going to use here, and that is, good is the enemy of great. Good is the enemy of great. When we get good enough, most people will stop striving. So you got to figure out, can I inspire these people? It's not motivation. This is another one. Inspiration versus motivation is another mind model that I talk about. Inspiration is far, far more effective than motivation. Motivation almost always comes from an outside source. So does inspiration frequently, but inspiration goes internal and it goes into that person, and that person then takes it on as their change, their thing. You go, so what's the difference between that and motivation? Motivation, unless it keeps on getting more energy, more outside influence being put into it, for the person will tend to poop out in 48 to 72 hours. And that was motivation. I don't want motivation. I want inspiration. I want to be inspired so that I keep on living a dream and seeing that dream come to fruition. When I get a vision or an image in my mind, I now have an image of our Renault in our mind. I didn't fully have it in my mind initially when I started, but I've been working on it. And now I see the completed bathroom. Well, my wife wanted an ensuite that was spa-like. Well, oh my God, this is going to be spa-like. And it's going to be done reasonably inexpensively, so it meets my need of keeping the budget down within reason, but it gives her vision of it. But finding that balance and thinking about it and envisioning it and working on getting that idea so that I can see it in my mind gives me the ability to be able to conceive it, perceive it, and then do it. And so that whole conceive, perceive, do is a critical path that people need to go through to make things happen and to change their lives. So many people have tried to do this with mindset. So many people have gone out there and tried to have their mindset focused for a long period of time. If you're on and it's working for you, great. Just don't ever lose it, and don't have a situation that hits you from the side, and because that will undermine you. But when you get a vision and you see what's possible and you have been inspired, not just motivated, but inspired, that keeps the motivation going inside of you. You feel inspired to continue and you get internally motivated. And once that internal motivation kicks in and it's not external, it's a huge difference between the motivation that is motivational people or people pumping you up or whatever. It's very, very different. Anyway, I hope that makes sense to you guys, and I hope that works, because it is transformational. And when you get all of these mind models, or at least a few of these mind models, the neat thing about mind models is you don't need many to make a significant difference in your life. You can still start making a big, big difference, unless you want to rewire your mind for wealth, or rewire your mind for relationships, or rewire your mind for something else. Then that takes specific focused, mind models to make that happen. But those things are all possible. They are all possible. Anyway, Trevor, any thoughts on that stuff?
Nope. You had a lot of really great stuff there, almost going into a whole bunch of other mind models.
They were. Sorry, I started drifting.
But I'm assuming everybody loved it, so that's no problem. If there's nothing else that you wanted to say about self-situation and other, maybe we could see if anybody wanted to get profiled. We don't have too many people on today. I think everybody's trying to capture what they can of the summer before it's over.
Yeah, really.
But if anybody is on, especially if you've never been on before, or if you haven't been profiled, if you raise your hand, how that works is we bring you on live and you become a panelist like us. So you've got video and audio and communicate with us. And Blair will start off by profiling you. He'll just ask you to tell him a little bit about yourself. And then he'll profile you based on your language pattern and fill you in on some of the gaps that you're having, as well as some of your strengths. And that usually spins into good coaching opportunities where he can zone in on exactly what it is that you need help with. So if anybody's open to do that, just raise your hand or put in the chat that you'd like to do that, and I will add you as a panelist. Or if nobody wants to do that, or if everybody on here has already been profiled, if you just have something that's bothering you, or something that's not working, or something that you'd like Blair's help with, just to get some coaching and help you work through it, more than welcome to raise your hand for that as well. And we'll just bring you on and work with you for a bit.
Exactly. So one of the key elements here is profiling is, I basically discovered that a person could learn profiling skills. And I could develop this based on some of the mind models, and make high probability determinations, best guesses.
Hey, do you want to maybe turn your share off just to go back to your...
Sure. Yeah, no problem. There we go. So that stops popping up all the time. There we go. So basically what happens there is you wind up being able to hear people. And again, as I was describing mind models earlier, when you can start listening to not what they're talking about, but to how they're talking, how they're thinking literally, because you have these meta models, these models that are like, almost like if it's a computer, it's computer language. It's zeros and ones. It's back down to the machine language. And when you start listening to a person talk like it's machine language, you can start seeing these patterns. At least I can, and I've taught a few other people how to do this. You can start seeing and hearing these patterns in their language, and how those language patterns give high probability indications of how people process information. And when you wind up taking a look at that processing of how they're processing their information, you start getting it in a way that people can start identifying. Well, I can start identifying what those patterns are, share that to see if that's accurate or not, because it's just an assumption from me. I don't take these as fact until somebody confirms that it's true. It's just a best guess. And I can be wrong. I'm usually not, but sometimes I am. And that's okay, because I learn. I've learned from making a lot of mistakes, and getting really comfortable with making mistakes and moving forward, and just seeing all of these incremental pieces and seeing how things can shift. again, incrementally, just one small change at a time. And the more that we can start picking up and taking responsibility for ourselves, the more effective we can become. And how do we take responsibility? Not by dumping all of this load of responsibility on us, but by being able to identify mind models, skills and behaviors, a mind model that's effective that I can use in multiple situations and repeat it to get a similar result in many different situations. And these are models, then. They're not answers. They're ways of figuring out how to become resourceful so that I can find answers and shift my life to a more predictable response. When I've taken that into individuals and do individual one-on-one counseling, they resolve their own problem by me just causing their brain to associate with the resources, and then they can solve their own problem. And some of these people have been stuck for literally years with this problem. Sometimes it's just days or weeks, or they're in overwhelm, but they can do this.
Taylor was willing to come on with us, but he didn't want to have his video. We can just give him audio.
Sure.
Do you want to finish what you were going into there? I just wanted to let you know, since you probably didn't notice.
No, I didn't. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't have my Q&A box up. So
yeah, okay. Did you want me to do that right now, or did you?
Yeah, just go ahead and whatnot. So, I mean, I'll just finish jabbering here. Well, so basically, the mind models give us that ability to notice how we're thinking, plus notice how other people are thinking. So that's basically it. And as I said, it's based on language patterns. And Taylor is going to, he put up his hand and said, okay, I'll come in, I'll get profiled. And that's great. Thank you so much. And one of the things that I do is just literally listen to his language pattern, because I'm not going to get visual cues this time. Usually it's slightly easier if I get visual cues, but it's not impossible. I've done this on a radio talk show. I do it just by listening to language. So anyway.
Cool. Are you ready then?
Yes, I am. I'm totally good to go.
Well, Taylor, I'm going to press the button that says allow to talk. I don't know exactly how this function works, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Taylor.
He did unmute.
How about, guys hear me now?
Yes, totally.
Perfect. All right, wonderful. Well, how you guys doing? I lost your video. I don't know if you still hear me.
Yeah, your connection was bad there for a moment.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. How you guys doing today? Well, this is my first time listening to you, Mr. Blair and Mr. Ever. I've been an entrepreneur for the past 20 years, and I've done a lot of businesses, and none of them were successful to the point where it was satisfactory to me.
Right.
Now I've been unemployed for about 3 years. My last business, kind of trying to go into different avenues, but I haven't decided on what I want to do, and I'm kind of taking a break. So.
Okay. So what types of businesses were you in previously?
Well, mechanic shops, stores, a computer store. I mean, many different businesses, construction.
Okay, cool.
And yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
They were low end businesses, nothing that I can expand to expand it to where it's like a franchise or anything like that. Well, I tried that, but it didn't work out either.
Right.
Kind of the systems weren't in place.
Right.
Well, yeah.
So, what else do you do in your life, Taylor?
What? I'm sorry, you're breaking up. What is it?
Oh, sorry. So, what else do you do? You're not employed right now. You're unemployed. But what else do you do in your life? What do you fill your time with?
Well, I'm learning a lot. I learn a lot. Do trading, investments.
Cool.
I'm blogging, bit of blogging, not a lot, but I'm kind of scattered and unfocused. The focus just not there.
Yep.
You know, I kind of like trying to memorize stuff instead of completely understanding the stuff. And I'm not good at memorizing. I'm better at understanding.
I get that
You know,
totally. Yeah. That's a
yeah.
big difference there. So how would you, I've got more than enough information now. Oh, except for what do you do for hobbies?
Hobbies, that's the question that I always ask myself. I really, I like reading a lot, and also like computer, like software repairs and things like that, hardware, things
Nice.
like that. Yeah,
Are you married? Do you have kids?
yeah. I'm married and I have two kids. I've been married 18 years.
Nice. Cool. Okay. Awesome. So what would you like me to help you with? Or
Well, the unfocused, like you know, is just I'm scattered. Like I'd like to focus on something, and kind of learn how to focus on that, and give it ample time to finish what I'm trying to. And the problem is like I start reading about, and I get sideswiped by something, another idea in the subject that I'm reading. Then I go into that idea, and then it's cascades into like hours of just, you know, and instead of focusing on one thing, just jumping from one thing to the other.
I hear you. So when you started your businesses, was that something that you did? Did you jump around, or were you able to focus more effectively back then?
Well, I was more able to focus, but the problem that I always ran into, it got limited.
Right. I got it
Yeah,
loud and clear. Okay.
yeah,
So what would you like from, you want me to work on focus? I got that. I can
yeah.
definitely do that. So there's some of the things that you're doing that is, I mean, you've got basically a lot of people who are entrepreneurs tend to go from opportunity to opportunity, and their brain always sees opportunity. What you haven't done yet is you haven't figured out what type of opportunity do you want, and it seems like you want to be able to scale your business. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the problem has been that the businesses that you've gotten into have not been actually scalable, correct?
Exactly. I mean, they're scalable to a
Yeah,
certain
limited
level,
degree.
but
Yeah,
but
I totally.
limited degree. They're. It's like, you know, in order to scale them, you need the skill set.
Absolutely.
People that will, but the level of their of the skill that is required. So acquire a franchise or anything like that in in such a business, it's hard because like the people that have that kind of skill just don't have that kind of money, you know,
Right.
or
Yeah,
the mentality or the mental capacity. I should.
absolutely true. Absolutely true. So, what is that limiting? Do you have any idea what your limiting belief is?
Well, I mean, due to all these businesses before that, like, you know, they hit a certain level and not exceed my expectations, or you know, they hit at like a plateau, and then they just start falling instead of like grinding higher.
Yeah,
So
I can
I
describe
always thought
this.
it's something. Well, I always thought it's something that like I'm limited myself not to be
Yep.
able to further. You know, just run into a wall. Like, what can I do to further do anything? And anything kind of backfires and it drops
Yep.
the business.
Well, honestly, you know, Taylor, one of the issues here is evaluation versus judgment. What you've got is you have the ability to make a lot of great judgments, and you input information so that you understand it, but yet you've got a judgment language pattern there, which is
Mhm.
excellent for a quick start person, for somebody who can start up a business and move it forward. Now, one of the things, there's two ways to take advantage of this. One of those ways is to literally start up businesses and sell them, but you start them up to sell them.
Absolutely.
So, and that's one of the ways that you can actually build and flip the businesses to do that. The next area is to increase your ability to evaluate, because your ability to evaluate is not actually engaged as effectively as it might be. So jumping back into one of our earlier mind models here on evaluation versus judgment would be really critical and rather useful for you to see the difference between evaluation versus judgment. You have enough experience, and I'm going to say it with a lot of respect, but enough experience to be dangerous, because you have enough to get going, but not enough to leverage it beyond that first phase. So startup phase is a very, very difficult phase, and you've done it repeatedly. And it sounds like you've done it basically successfully up to a point, and it fizzles out over time.
I've done it successfully up to 18.
How many times? Sorry,
18.
18 times. Oh, wow. Once a year for a bunch of years. Okay. So I totally understand that, but that's that point where you've got to break out of that pattern and take it to that next level. And beliefs, your belief systems are inhibiting your behaviors, where you see what you're doing and yet you don't have the behaviors to take it to the next level. So digging in and figuring out what your model is that you're wanting to move forward. And the problem is that at least back in the early days, you probably did not go after business models that much. And now you're not doing business models as much anymore as well, because you're not seeing the purpose of it, because you know enough of the things that you need to do to be able to make the money, to do the deals, to be able to transition it, to get it to the next step, like to get it started. And you can get it started, but the systems, like you said, are not in place. They are not documented, and therefore they are not transferable. And you don't name and label things.
Absolutely.
Or get people around you to name and label things, so that you have a consistent pattern of behaviors from not only you, but the people around you, so that you can make it identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable. And that's the issue. You've got it identified, no problem. You sort of can repeat it yourself, not too bad. But when you go to grow it, it's not duplicatable.
Exactly.
You can't get it into other people. And I mean, I'm just telling you what you've already told me. It's not really profiling, it's just regurgitating. But the mind models that are there are, or that are missing, is there's lack of naming and labeling, which means building systems that are identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable. You work off judgment as opposed to evaluation. You don't figure out what's working. And you get frustrated because it's not working like you expected it to. So that creates a level of frustration in you, where you feel like throwing in the towel, because this one also didn't work. So you feel like giving up, and it doesn't charge you anymore. And then you see something else. Bright shiny object syndrome is the other thing that you've got, where you see something else that you think could get you there faster. But I had a guest on last week, Earl Flormata, and I was chatting with him. I didn't tell you guys the backstory, but a little bit of the backstory about Earl is he was really much like you, Taylor, really a lot like you. And the problem was he was jumping around from idea to idea to idea, and he never documented, and he never stayed focused on one thing long enough to really grow it. And now he's learned his lesson. Some 14 years later, after I first met him, he's learned his lesson, and he's putting in his time on actually growing a business opportunity. And he figured out skill sets. His skill sets that he had to figure out were marketing skill sets of how to market anything. And He actually has done a very, very good job and got hired on as a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of a publicly traded company. So, yeah. And yeah, the deals that they're looking at doing right now are like, holy crap, it's a big deal. Like, those are big deals, like tens of millions of dollars for a small deal. So
also, another issue that I'm facing also is delegating like help.
Yep.
I can't seem to delegate help or find qualified people things that I want to do, because there's other businesses, online businesses that I want to do, but I'm having a hard time delegating services or delegating, and I kind of always choose the wrong person that they just feed you
that's because, again, you're not evaluating. Like, when I do online stuff, I go to Fiverr, and so many people say, Fiverr is crap. You can't find good people on Fiverr. I find really good people on Fiverr. How come? Because I take the time to write out exactly what I want, number one, and I hire 3, because the pricing on Fiverr is so affordable. I hire 3 people, and I do my research. I spend time sorting out who's that best person. I don't try and make it a fast job. I try and make it an effective job. So I'm not after speed. I'm after effectiveness, because effectiveness always turns into speed when I do it effectively, because I'm not throwing away money. And I find, like, after I test those 3 people, one of them is better. And if it's not good enough, I get 2 more. And I do another round of tests. And I have them do it again and again until I find somebody that actually does it at the level and price point I need it done at, within reason. Like, if I need a really good high-end piece, well, I expect to pay more. If I don't, I don't. But I mean, it's just, that's one of the key elements there. That's highly effective. I'm no good at typing, but I can dictate, I can talk, and I can edit that stuff once it has been transcribed. So at the end of the day, I hire rev.com, and they're a transcription service, and they're $1 a minute for transcribing anything. So it's a very inexpensive way to go out there and get things done. It's way cheaper than hiring a receptionist or secretary or whatever, because you don't have all the overhead. And yeah, it's $60 an hour, but at the end of the day, most of your stuff isn't an hour long that you're going to be dictating. And if it is, it's probably high value. So again, it's worth it. So again,
yeah, absolutely.
These are
great points.
Yeah, they're just tips and tricks that you can take a look at doing. And the other thing is, figure out how to, get yourself involved and learn how to tell a story. In my profiling of your language and how you sell, it's you convince people how good whatever it is that you're selling is, as opposed to making them the hero in their life. Because we as business people are always just a guide. We just guide people through, and we share the information that we can share with them, but we're just a guide. You are the hero in this story. You are the person that needs to go out there and slay the dragon and start the business and do all that stuff. All I can do is give you the tools, the guidance, and the mind models, and say, hey, go in this direction. Give that a whirl. It probably will work. And since I get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for that advice, it usually does work. I mean, I've got enough.
Absolutely, here.
Like we just got another contract signed with another client. I mean, it's just shy of $300,000. So, I mean, I know what I'm doing.
My brother always tells me, he's like, you're a great salesman. You convince people somehow to do things, but you're not using that that gift, you know. And I got the gift of blab. I got the gift of language.
Yeah.
You know, I can go as sophisticated as I need and as limited as I need, you know.
Perfect.
But I just don't know how to apply it. Basically, like I'm always I have great understanding. I'm a scientific person, but
Yeah.
once I get to applying it, that's where I'm having pretty much no luck. Like I lack applying the knowledge that I have.
Well, one of the elements there is you're probably making it a little too complicated for everybody else because you get into understanding the information just a little too much. And yeah, you've got the gift of gab. So great. You can go out there and use it, and you can keep it simple when you have to. Awesome. So start taking a look at what your strengths are and what your gaps are. So if you sit down and just write out a list of what are your strengths and what don't you have? And for a business, what kind of business can I start that leverages my strengths? And just start building off your strengths. Man, I'm dyslexic. If I did it off my weaknesses, I'd be falling on my face all day long forever. Like it would just be Groundhog Day over and over and over again of me doing pratfalls on my face. So, I mean, it would be sad. It would be a very, very sad story. But that's not me, because I figured out how to look at my strengths and build on strengths and get stronger strengths. At the end of the day, that's what everybody needs. Yeah. And that's one of the things that mind models do, is they give you, mind models are just the models that people use every single day that they're completely unaware of, that are just all subconscious, and they work anyway. Like when you do something where you've judged yourself and you feel badly, well, that didn't work. But when you evaluate yourself and you feel really good about it, well, that does work. So nobody bothered to identify these things. I took years of identifying what some of these things are and describing them down so that you have a mind model that you can follow. Because for me, mindset doesn't work. And it seems like you're a guy that sets goals and tries to do things off mindset, and get your mindset right and get yourself focused. And your focus isn't getting focused because you're not evaluating your strengths. Therefore, you can't hold on to your focus because it's all based on beliefs. Beliefs don't work well for long-term things. Like as I described earlier, motivation is a belief. Inspiration is not a belief. It's actually a vision. It's like creating an opportunity in front of you, seeing an image of what you're doing and how you're doing it, and transforming yourself into that vision. That's not motivation. That's inspiration. That's inspired thinking. So that whole model is very different than mindset. It becomes a mind model that's identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable. And that's some of the pieces that you're not working on right now. You're not looking for identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable. You're looking for rapid wins, quick growth. Where can I find a place that I can hammer this thing and just make a ton of money quickly? Well,
exactly.
Yeah, but it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You know what? The fastest way to make money is to go at it slow. Yeah, because incremental growth will get you there way faster than trying to hit an out of the park home run.
You know, in my trading career, I did trading for years, and I had to learn that the hard way, that, you know, a little bit at a time, at a steady pace, it'll get you there. But
it does.
At the same time, I'm always having problem with randomness, probability, probabilistic thinking.
Yep.
And that there's nothing guaranteed. It's just, you know, you basically apply your best and hope for the best, and keep a goal and focused on the goal.
But there's also the mathematics of that. I mean, I know enough about that to be dangerous because I took a lot of trading courses over the years as well. And my thing here is it's great background information for business, but finding something that you can help other people influence their lives with is huge. Forgot the name of the book. There was a really good book on trading that I thought. Mavericks. Trading Mavericks. I can't pull it up. Sorry. Anyway, it's one of the better ones that I've seen on how to think and create a plan. And it's also based on not putting all your money in, as you probably well know, and putting a little bit in and developing that, building that, and then always having a percentage back so that even if you do take a rather large hit, you've always got a reserve so that you can recover and move forward. But you try and play the fast game, and it doesn't get anywhere fast. That's the problem. So just warning you on that one.
I find that out the hard way 4 years ago. So I never gamble with or trade with money that I can't afford to lose. So
absolutely good. Well, hopefully that was effective for you and useful.
Yes, sir.
Great.
So help Blair and Mr. Trevor.
No problem. So what part of the world do you hail from, sir?
From Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh, very cool. Because I did detect that sort of
accent.
Southernish accent there. So cool.
Southwest.
Nice. Pleasure meeting you, sir. Glad
Same
you can
here.
make it on board. Okay. Hopefully that worked out well for you. And hopefully you'll jump on another
another avenue.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool.
Start a new chapter.
You betcha. And go back and take a look at some of those other mind models, like even clarity versus certainty, because that's one of the things you don't go after. Is you go after certainty as opposed to clarity anyway. Effective versus ineffective, and another one, the number one here is the judgment versus evaluation. Those are the three mind models I'd really suggest you take a look at. Okay?
Thank you, guys.
You bet. You have yourself a great night. Okay?
You too. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
So that was a little different. If there's somebody else that would like to jump on there, I see Jacqueline Wilson joined again and came on a little later today, which is cool. Thanks for joining us, Jacqueline. Jackie, I should say Jackie. Jacqueline.
Yeah, if there's anybody else that it's got something they want to work on with Blair that you're struggling with, or you're not sure how to work through and you could just use some help working through it, raise your hand or let us know in the chat. Otherwise, we might wrap it up.
Yeah, I think,
if you don't raise your hand, we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah. Right. And then everybody's like, keep your hand down, keep your hand down. No, just kidding. No. So no, I think it actually wound up being a pretty good evening for mind models, because we covered off quite a few, talking about control and influence, self, others, situations. And that was just sort of scratching the surface of it, guys. The control piece is critical. There's so many pieces where we don't know how to take control, and the influence by setting expectations with others, by asking them, what do you expect to have happen here? What do you see needs to happen? And they will probably point the finger at you if you're a facilitator, and your job is to politely, relatively gently, turn it around and point it back at them, because you cannot make anybody else learn. Only you can cause yourself to learn. So we have to be the ones that are responsible for our own learning. You get information from a guide, a teacher, a mentor, whatever word you want to put on there, but you have to be that person to incorporate it in your life, because it's your story. It's your movie. It's your life. You're the hero of your own show, and that show is your life. So yeah, take up the charge, be the hero, and find a guide, find a mentor, find that person that you can learn from. But know that, yeah, they're not the ones that are going to make me do it. Only you are the one that's going to be able to make yourself do it. So that's it. Anyway, I don't see any other hands up here.
Taylor was just saying, would this be recorded and is it available later? Yes, Taylor. This was broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube, so it should be available on Facebook right away if you missed the beginning of it. And on YouTube, sometimes it screws up and I have to re-upload it, but if it's on there completely, it's there right there as well. The YouTube channel is called the Blair Dunkley Experience, if you search for that. And Taylor, since this was your first time, if you go into the Blair Dunkley Experience Facebook group, if you're not already in there, search for that to find a Facebook group and ask for your way in. There is an announcement post there that should be near the top where it's a link to a YouTube playlist with all the previous episodes. So there's 10 before this one that are recorded going through a bunch of different mind models. So check it out. And yeah, I think we're all good. Anything else you wanted to add, Blair, or can we shut it down?
No, I think we're good for tonight. I'm really pleased with what we got covered off here. And we're starting to stack some of the mind models already and getting them so that they are linking one to the other. And I've talked briefly about stacking mind models. I think I'm going to need to do more of that again in the relatively near future so that people get the concept behind how mind models can work with each other. So, because they're very, very powerful when they work like that. So thrilled that you guys came out tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Anyway, for myself, thanks for coming out. Trevor, any final words?
No, you guys all have a good night and enjoy your last week of summer.
Yeah, really. Enjoy, guys. Bye for now.